I'm starting to rattle too.
Headphones are supposed to get better with age. Have you ever heard about breaking in your headphones?
No, actually.
So there's this weird audiophile legend, whether it's legitimate or not, that if you get a pair of headphones, you're supposed to give them a break-in. So what you would do is you would play, some people just say music, some people say a specific range of frequencies, whatever that's meant to break them in. Some say it high volume, some say it regular listening volume, and you just let it burn in for like hours and hours, days and days. And then apparently the sound quality improves as you free up your drivers to move back and forth.
Okay.
It sounds like maybe it has some merit to it, but I don't really know. And anybody that I've ever have a look at this, where they buy two, headphones or whatever, they buy the same ones that they used to have, and they try this out. Most people don't really seem to tell much of a difference. And I don't know, there probably is a more objective way to do it, where if you had like a listening microphone of some kind that could measure the frequencies coming out of the headphones, you could possibly tell if it's more.
I wonder if they do it in
dynamic.
like quality control in the factory, because they'd have to at least make sure the headphones work, wouldn't they?
Possibly.
So if they run it through a gamut of tests,
I think unless you're buying like top of the line Sennheiser or something that's a premium product, you're probably not dealing with quality control at the individual level for
I guess
like
that's
listening.
fair.
Like, it's probably just batch, where they test a couple in the batch. If the batch is overall that acceptable level, then they pass the batch. If it's not, dump the whole thing. Not worth testing all of them, I would imagine, for most headphones. Although I use Audio-Technica monitoring headphones, I don't know what the quality controls.
I think Santa might be bringing me a pair of really? Something like that I think so.
What leads you to believe this?
I asked him.
You did?
Yeah.
Fancy.
We'll see if he delivers.
Does Santa deliver his own gifts?
Possibly.
Okay. If you had to pick a pair of Audio-Technica monitoring headphones, which ones would you pick?
Santa's still looking. Santa can't make a comment.
No. Really? Because they have... I got the ATH M50s.
The ones that everybody talks about.
But they have a better... They have like a... Since after mine came out, they had ones that detach the cord from the headphones, and I think they have a wireless version of.
They do have a wireless version now.
Yeah. Which, if it's monitoring headphones, I want a cord, better overall, and I'm not really going to have an issue being tethered to my computer, because that's where I'm going to be sitting while I'm using them. I like the design. They haven't really changed much. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I think I'd still buy the ones that I did, although if I had more money, I'd probably go with Sennheiser HD 700s or something nicer like that. There's lots of really good premium headphones once you're willing to spend over $500. But I got mine on sale like probably 5 years ago, whenever it was, for like I think $120 Canadian on Amazon. So it was a good deal at the time. I'd imagine you could probably get a good sale on them still now.
That's why. Yeah, I'm just waiting on Santa. We'll see. Yeah, sound... Well, I've noticed that my taste has changed over the past year. I don't know what it is. I give a lot of credit to Adobe. It sounds weird, but for whatever reason, when I used to edit all the time with Final Cut, I do the bass color correction and a bass sound edit in Soundtrack Pro. And it worked, but I never really experimented. I never really had fun with it. And maybe it's a mix of the automatic audio sync, which saves a lot of time in all the weddings, or maybe Adobe just makes it easier. But I have a lot of fun sound editing weddings and that little cartoon that I made for Beaties. And I also have a lot of fun color correcting, which sounds weird because back in school, I hated color correcting.
I love both, really. And Audition's fairly straightforward, although I
love Audition.
It's very simple as far as sound editing goes. Yeah. Premiere, the color correction side, it gets complicated, but in a good way. Like you can just nitpick with every little thing, and I love it. It's fantastic.
That's why the episode from last week when we were in the dark, it's going to be a very interesting look. Mm-hmm. I'm excited. I have a few things. We talked about it last night, but I'll start tomorrow. And by tomorrow, I mean 2 weeks ago for the people listening, or whenever, because who knows when people listen. I still have a few people message me every so often that I forget are watching this, because I forget that people can actually, like, you put it up, but you forget that people might actually sit through and listen. Like Nancy, Tila was telling me. Hi, Nancy.
Hello.
Because I know you're listening, and I keep forgetting that you listen. She said that she told Tila something that she had heard from somebody.
Yeah, she quoted us.
She quoted us. That's funny.
Yeah.
A little bit weird, but really funny.
It's very flattering.
And another one of my friends, she sent me a message. She's like, I didn't know you ever smoked pot. Like, where is this coming from?
Oh, you're going to start getting judgments. I haven't gotten any... Nobody messages me, ever.
Do you ever share the podcast?
Sometimes. Probably not as often as you do, because you probably do every one.
I try to.
Yeah. Maybe half of the ones since they've been on Facebook I've shared. But, and that is... It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because it'd be fun to have people maybe message me and ask me about stuff, because, I don't know, I guess my life is boring enough that I could handle a few extra Facebook
messages. Is it boring, though?
I don't know. I'm in constant search of stimulation.
I always get intrigued when people send me messages, because they're like, you smoke pot?
But then the other side of that sword is, do I really want all of my Facebook friends and family members to watch this? I guess I don't really care that much.
You have to assume that most of them won't.
Exactly. Most of them will not, especially the friends. Although I feel like family might be more inclined to do so.
I don't think my family does. Hey, Dad, if you're listening, and I don't think you are, but if you are, send me a message right now. It'd be weird if I got a message from you right now, but when you do, if you ever listen to this, send me a message and say, I listened. I'll be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
That's one thing that a lot of podcasters get a bit meta about, even in their own podcasts. Just constantly like, stop sending me these Twitter messages, getting pissed off at me from, doing whatever in whatever episode. It's like, I don't remember saying that.
There's a lot of times, like when I try to do a recap during posting, I'm like, I just edited the goddamn thing, but what the hell did we talk about?
No, I have no
So I
idea.
take notes as I'm editing now to try to get a rough idea. Time stamping is also an issue too. Although, I'm assuming you don't watch them.
No. No, I don't.
And I don't watch them outside of the editing, but I think I'm going to have to go back because I know you haven't watched them. So I've done some interesting things, and nobody has ever called me out on it. Tila obviously has long since stopped listening, so I don't get as much critiquing there. But sometimes I'll just put something in, something random. We'll call back to something, and I'll put it in. So there's some interesting little clippets and snippets in there.
I'm sure I'd appreciate it if I went back, but the longer I wait, the more I'm going to forget the relevance.
You're already probably at 50 hours of podcast. That's insane.
Yeah. No.
This is, I mean, not to air out any grievances, but this is actually, your numbering scheme is off because we did the NAS video that never got released and you marked it as a number. So we're actually one under.
Well, then we'll just dump them. Yeah. That's okay. I can live with that.
But, no, just little snippets like last week. I thought it was funny. Most of the time we have people screw up words, but for some reason I just thought it was funny to do. When Kevin was talking about making money, he was talking about how he works for Canada Post and it puts bed on his table. And he said it, and I went back and I checked. So beside him when he says it, there's a picture of a bed on a table.
And I have a day job with Canada Post.
Right.
And that puts a good amount of bread on the table. Like,
I just thought it was funny. It made me laugh.
It's like the literal translation. Of
yes, there's a bed on the table.
I can appreciate that.
And there's snippets and whatnot. It's fun. If I'm not crunched on time, which a lot of times it is, I get to have a little bit more fun with it.
The Shia LaBeouf thing?
Do it!
Yeah. The green
do it!
Green Shia LaBeouf.
Okay.
Do it! Do it!
There we go.
It feels like the biggest, widest, hardest, sharpest shit you've ever taken.
25 episodes of the podcast on this.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
Boo dooby 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 doo.
Last week you had long curly hair and beard stubble.
I guess this is the one where I have short hair.
This
First
week
time.
you look like a convict. Tomorrow, as I was saying, doesn't really matter, is well, Melissa and I have been dating for 1 year. And that's a long time for me, because normally I go years without dating, much less being in a relationship for 1 year. So, woohoo.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's a long time, as I said, it's a long time for me. And I can say it because nobody will know. I bought her, I made a collage of a bunch of photos that we've had just from when we were in Florida and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I got her a little charm bracelet that has flamingos on it because she likes flamingos. And I went out of my artistic realm of safeness. I drew her something.
Oh. I'd like to see a drawing.
You probably don't.
No?
And it's all wrapped up, so I can't really show
Well,
it.
I can wait.
Yes. That picture you took of her and I at
Yeah.
Shane and Heather's wedding.
I remember that picture.
Yeah. I thought, I'm going to try to draw it. I'm going to put some time and energy into it.
Like a rough sketch style? Or...
Rough sketch. Very rough sketch. And overall, it doesn't look too bad.
I was half expecting you to make a caricature or something.
I could. Overall, not too bad. Till you get to the faces.
Well, faces
Holy
are tricky.
Fuck, faces are hard. So I went through one canvas, because I was doing it on canvas. And I had to start over. So I'm like, I fucked up the face. This is not good. On the second one, things were looking good. I'm like, I'm not even going to attempt the face. I'm going to cheat. I had to cheat a little bit. So I went online, and I was able to take the picture of us and kind of turn it into a sketch, like a black and white type sketch. And I cut her head out with her hair and my head out with mine, and I glued it on the canvas. So now it's like special art because it's drawn and then there's our actual faces and it is colored in. It's about 75% of what I was hoping it was going to be, but I put a lot of time into it. And while I'm not proud of the way it looks, I'm proud of the fact that I was able to do it. And I actually don't mind the drawing and the coloring and the tedium of it. So I have another canvas, so I'm going to actually try to do like a simpler no face photo, like a landscape or something like that.
The only thing that I was ever okay at drawing was kind of cartoon type shapes. Like, for instance, I was big into Pokemon as a kid, and I could draw that out decently. But it's very simple lines. It's not like complex shading or anything. It makes things quite easy. Are you unwrapping a gift?
It's the canvas.
Oh. Well, I guess you gotta retape that up later.
I will. To be fair, I don't know if I want to show this anymore. Oh, well,
I definitely want to see it.
whatever. I tried.
The faces are a little bit jarring, but everything else is pretty good.
I know if you take it out of the face, I know the picture. I'm not happy with the faces, but whatever. I was worried about details like the flowers and whatnot, but when you just draw lines, it looks like leaves. And then her dress, I'm like, fuck her dress. She should have just
Wasn't
wore
that a
something
floral
simple.
dress?
It was a fully floral
Yeah.
dress. So, kind of.
Yeah.
Not the worst. Not the best. So, I tried. I don't know.
I like how the top of your head sticks over the canvas.
I didn't quite scale it. I didn't do it on purpose, but I made myself kind of longer than I actually am height-wise, and I kind of fucked up my shoulders. So it worked out. It makes me look egotistical. So I'm like, oh, I'm a broad-shouldered football player almost in this photo, but I'm not. So, and I'm well aware I'm not. It's just not a good perspective. So I tried.
Yeah. Congratulations on trying.
Thank you.
I can't say that I would be able to do any better.
You should try.
Maybe. Not my style. Like I said, I like cartoony kind of style. But
I like cartoon stuff too.
No, like complex shading, just minimalistic, just lines. Like here's the edge of a feature of this creature. Like, because Pokemon was my thing, but like
I like cartoon.
I probably do people too, I guess.
And the other thing, and I don't know how the hell I would ever start to do this again, something about the friggin' Joe Rogan podcast. I don't know why it clicked. I don't know why I found it so intriguing. I want to somehow find a way to slowly get back into hypnosis.
So, where do you think you would start? Would you just be practicing?
Well, I already know how to do it.
Yes.
Which puts me ahead of a lot of people.
It's true. But okay, so you need people to be part of this. You need a way to organize events.
Realistically, what I need to
Get into a group of other hypnotists.
I don't know. It's been so long since I've actually searched for anything like that. I highly doubt that there's a Niagara hypnosis group.
I disagree. I bet there is. There's groups for everything.
That's true.
And I don't think you necessarily want to corroborate with any of those people, just because back when I was getting into photography, I noticed there was a lot of photography groups, and a lot of the people in those groups suck as people and as photographers. But maybe there are the gems in there that you do want to associate yourself with, and you could probably build yourself up from or work with in some way that's beneficial.
There is a Niagara Falls, New York mental health service for Niagara hypnosis, but there's nothing explicitly that. Anyways, there's a holistic lifestyles community.
We know several people that do the whole on stage thing.
Yeah.
It's sort of a foot in the door.
The other thing I should probably do is at some point consider taking another course and kind of getting recertified. Not that there's more modern techniques.
Certified.
I had a
certificate.
I had a license to do stage hypnosis.
Who checks that license?
That's a good question.
Do you show it before you book a gig?
Well, the only few gigs that I really booked were a few at the Niagara College in Welland and Niagara College in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And when you have a student that comes up and says, I'd like to bring people on stage and, potentially make them orgasm or something like that, they like some sort of credential check.
Yes. And also, as a student, you can probably get away with more.
Oh, it was fun, Eric.
Yeah.
It was fun.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah, so
as a almost 30-year-old adult, I don't know. Where's your outlet?
I don't know
to do that kind of stuff.
I think a lot of the people, because I don't actively follow, but I follow some famous-ish hypnotists, and most of them do like the college circuit and whatnot, which I'm surprised that they still do. And I wonder if their performances have been cleaned up because they're performing at colleges. You know how some comedians only perform at colleges because they're safe comedians or whatever. So I wonder if the hypnotists do that too, and then some perform like actual stage events. I know Tila and I went to go see a young hypnotist at Showtime, and he wasn't good.
As it is the mixed bag that is Showtime.
Yes.
Some of the comedy nights are great.
Some of the comedy nights are great.
Some of them are meh.
I will admit, it is kind of nice to go to a show and actually think I could do better. Because I can't go to a musical show, or like I can't go see Road Waves and say I could do better. No, I fucking can't. I can't go. I'm going to see the Christmas Carol in Niagara-on-the-Lake tomorrow. I like acting, but I don't think I'm gonna end with that show thinking I could be a better Scrooge. Maybe, I don't know. But that hypnosis show with that new kid, I'm like, yeah, I could actually do better. So I have that. So I wonder if I could just go to Showtime and be like, hey, I don't know.
Standards seem a little low.
They do. Maybe they're interested in another hypnotist. I don't know. I don't know what the market for hypnosis is. It's very intriguing because I find it interesting.
Doing market research for hypnotists this sounds pretty easy. Just look at the hypnotists in the area, their followings, their engagement. See if you think you can do better, and then if you think that you can probably have a better following than any of those people.
Yeah, be intriguing. I think it's interesting because it was always funny. It never worked on Tila because big part of it, one of the deepening techniques, and you almost always have to do it, is the person forgetting their name. And she has this inherent issue with forgetting her name. So she always falls out of it. Every time years ago that I used to try it on her, that was the big roadblock. When the young hypnotist at Showtime did it, that was the roadblock. And when she got called up on stage, she's very suggestive. She's very suggestive at the beginning, so she always gets called up on stage. But once they say you're going to forget your name, I'm like, yeah, not a chance. This is going to shit. And it did. And then there's somebody like Justin who has watched me do it so many times. He actually knows the secrets of everything and the wording and specifically what goes where and why. And I also wonder what he thinks, because he's seen me do it. He's seen people do some of the most ridiculous things. I get intrigued from the outside. And I'd
be interested in going to a show just to see what it's all about.
Do you think you could be hypnotized?
I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. Of course, with I don't know, maybe it's just a skepticism that I feel like I'd have a will to resist it and just not be into it.
I feel like you might, but like a lot of people, you might need just a tiny bit of alcohol in your system.
Yeah. And it sounds like it'd be fun just to go along with it anyways, and then maybe you genuinely end up having fun.
That's just it. It's when people are faking it to be dicks, that's when you have to get them off the stage. When they're faking it because they want to be the star of the show, my mentality is if they're faking it, they're doing a good enough job to fake it, but they're on stage listening to me anyways. Are they really faking it?
I don't know.
Like, if I'm suggesting that they do something and they do it, willing or not, well, if they do it, they're willing. Whether they're like, well, I'm just faking it. Are you? So, it's the most friggin' intriguing thing ever.
Maybe it's a type of social pressure that, like, if I don't act like I'm hypnotized, then it would be weird. So they just go along. I don't know.
Whatever. It works, and it took a long time to figure out how to do it. I got my first hypnosis book when I was 12. And trust me, trying to hypnotize people in grade 7?
Probably not easy.
Not easy.
No.
When you're doing it, reciting it from the book, ooh, it's not good.
No.
So, but I remember by grade 10, we had a snow day, and there was only a handful of people. Teacher, it was in my Comtech course, and the teacher was just letting us screw around on the computers or whatever, and within like 10 minutes, I had 2 people on the ground, knocked out. And she was like, this is amazing.
How can I learn to do this?
Well, with most teachers, it was always, this is amazing. And then it was met with, you probably shouldn't be doing this.
No.
It's like that in college. I almost got thrown out of residence.
Wow.
I was a rebel. I had to submit a argument letter, I guess it was. Somebody had said that I had one of the things that you do, you put them to sleep, they wake up, they get sometimes confused, and I had said to somebody, because she was kind of really big on her hair, she loved her hair, so I thought it would be funny for her to think like there was something wrong with her hair. Inherently, there's nothing bad about that. There's nothing wrong with her hair. So I said, on the count of 3, when you wake up, you're going to think like there's just something in your hair, something wrong with your hair. She woke up. She got kind of nervous. Something was wrong with her hair, and somebody that wasn't me had convinced her that it was semen in her hair.
Oh.
Now, this person apparently did not like semen in her hair, or semen in general, around her head. So she complained. About semen in her hair when there was no semen in her hair. And it was interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how the university is going to handle, or I guess college would handle that situation.
I explained it to them, just 100% completely honest. I'm like, I wasn't the one that said that. And there was nothing in her hair, and I would never do that. The kind of, the most adult that I would go would be the quote-unquote pleasurable handshake. And even then, I didn't always do that because it weirds me out. But, yeah. So I said, it's kind of my thing. It's my guitar. I get to do something that not too many people get to do. And it's artistic because it plays with your emotion, as most great works of art do.
When are like what's the earliest age of like hypnotists that we would know today? Like, what's a name you could throw at me? Somebody that was doing this long time ago.
What do you mean? Like somebody who's been doing it forever?
When did hypnotism as its own thing sort of arise?
I think Penn and Teller have done some stuff. They've worked on debunking it as well, but they've done some stuff with hypnosis. So Penn and Teller would probably be like the biggest names. I know a lot of them, but I don't think you necessarily would.
Okay. I'm just interested because we know magicians' names going back a long time. So,
out of all the people that we know, I don't know any people that you would know that's also a hypnotist. Alex Kazam. Shout out.
Yeah,
does mentalism and mind reading, so there's suggestion involved in that. But I wouldn't call him a hypnotist.
hypnotic seance is a piece of art from 18.
There's Danny Z.
I'm just thinking like, if you opened up a history book and it was hypnosis, what's it? Where does it start? Popular by Frank
Mesmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
That would be.
18th.
That's where the term. You know where the term came
Mesmerized.
from. Mesmerized. Yeah. So that would probably be the best. There's.
It's interesting. Okay. I was just curious about how far back it goes.
It goes, but it used to be, and it is now, but it used to be kind of more of a purely medicinal thing. It was mental medicine. They were able to cure issues more or less with it, and they still do that today. I've only ever made somebody stop smoking once. Like, I've only ever cured the.
When's the last follow-up you had with this person?
Probably about a year ago.
Yeah, and that's
Cold turkey.
Been quit
No
for
cigarettes.
how long?
9 years.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Yeah. It was intense to do because it's not like a stage show where it's just an hour and you're done. It was quite a few. But when you're a cigarette smoking 16-year-old smoking more than the average adult, and you happen to know a hypnotist, which I guess not too many 16-year-olds would,
No.
it was an interesting experiment.
Although addictions are quite a bit easier to break if you do it young, I would imagine.
Yeah. It's really simple when you I mean, it's not simple, but when you think about it, the idea of trying to relate something that they do with something negative, that's just it. So once they relate the cigarette smoking to something bad, they do it less.
I mean, I've read a few psychology textbooks that the negative association technique for a lot of stuff like that is interesting. And it's not just hypnosis. I remember talking about experience where people would try to quit smoking, but they'd associate it with like electric shocks or like just something unpleasant as a sensation. And that is quite successful as a technique.
So same idea, just mental, I suppose. I think he was, minus the fact he was smoking, he was very socially conscious. So whenever he would go into it, I would always try to relate the smoking to like humiliating experiences that a 17 or 18-year-old would have. So cigarette equaled humiliate, and it worked eventually. So I don't know. Is he 100% pure? Is he 100% pure? Is he 100% cured if he smokes pot instead of cigarettes? I think so. I think he can smoke pot on the regular, but not smoke cigarettes. So I don't know. It's interesting. Just thinking about it. The podcast is riveting. I've enjoyed that one more. Just I'm blanking on his name.
Oh, the name of the hypnotist?
Yeah. I can't remember. That's bad because it's riveting. But
What was Joe's general disposition?
I'm only like 3/4 of the way done. He was interested. He he is very curious, kind of calls it like a cheat code to the mind, which
That sounds a bit like a magazine header or something.
a little bit, but because of how rapid you can do it, I'll never forget. I had a roommate, and he was into magic. Another magician. We've talked about him before. He's been known to cut people's head off in frames.
Okay.
Okay. So he was into magic, and he found out that I did hypnosis. And believe it or not, even though that I, never got with any of them, hypnosis for some reason was really popular with women. And he noticed that. He's like, you have to teach me. I'm like, I'm not going to teach you because you're creepy. Mm-hmm. And then he came to me one day, and he's like, can you do instant hypnosis? Yes. So there's a way to rapidly induce people. You can basically do it with a handshake. It's all about kind of screwing with their senses and their balance, not balance, but like mental balance. And then you basically put them to sleep. It's a quick induction. It kind of breaks through the first like 15 minutes of a show. It's not enough to get them to do anything of value. I guess that sounds kind of weird. It's not enough to get them to forget their name or something like that, but it's good deepening technique. And I only ever did it once after reading about it, because once you know how to do it slowly, you can do it. Instant's kind of weird way, but you can do it instantly, and it freaked me the fuck out. It's too weird. Just knowing that it is slightly possible. So I just never really did it, and I probably can't do it anymore because I'd have to know exactly what I'm doing again. But he was disappointed. He's like, I want to try it. I'm like, again, I don't know why. Just stop. Continue to do your balloon animals. This is my thing.
I don't know how related it is exactly, but I've heard of instances where people use some kind of psychological phenomenon to deter somebody that's acting violently. So an example, somebody I was watching on YouTube described a situation in which a guy was out with his girlfriend or whatever, and he was acting belligerently and drunkly, and he was looking for a fight with somebody.
That's the same podcast I'm talking about.
Yeah?
It was a hypnotist.
That was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then we've seen the same thing.
Yeah.
Perfect. And in the situation, yeah, the dude just starts talking about what it's something about the height of fences.
The height of the fence is just high enough,
but
and it throws the guy off.
But okay, that was one of the examples I was going to cite from this hypnotist podcast, but I've heard other people talk about it from personal experiences. So that is hypnotism.
It is. It's that in itself kind of throws off their mental, like their mental plan or whatever. And that hypnotist stories case, because the guy was drunk, it really did, because for whatever reason, drunk people tend to be better hypnotist subjects or hypnosis subjects. But in other cases, you can just, that's why it always worked with Marty McFly in Back to the Future. It's like, what's that over there? It throws them off. You can get away. That's not hypnosis. But
no.
If you throw people off with the way you respond to things.
It's the element of the unexpected almost. Like, there's interesting, I've seen stupid YouTube prank. This back in the era of people doing really dumb stuff on camera that they
still
pranks.
Do.
Anyway, ones where people would go out and pick fights or start an aggressive situation, and then to deflect it immediately, the aggressor, the person who's doing the show, would get naked, just stripped down naked, and then the person that was just about to
you wouldn't know what to do.
They just run. They're out of there. They have no interest anymore. It's this weird derailment of the human psychology. Like, this person was ready to fight. They're ready to knock this person senseless. Now this person is not wearing clothes, and they don't know what to do. What should that change about the situation? Nothing really, but it does. Do
you think it would change your, like, if
it
somebody
would catch you off guard? Absolutely.
It
would. Yeah.
I don't know. It definitely would throw me off guard, like 100%, and it's something so jarring that it would probably instantaneously change your...
It's the change that's the thing, because if somebody approached you naked to begin with trying to fight, you might still fight them because you consider them a threat. Or for instance, you work in retail.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes up to you in immediate...
6 more days, by the way.
6 more days, perfect. If somebody immediately sounds like they're off their rocker and they're talking about absolute nonsense, you're going to probably address the situation very calmly and just do whatever you have to
accordingly.
To do whatever. But if somebody's talking to you and they make perfect sense and they want you to do some prints and everything works out just fine, and then at the very last minute they just throw something your way talking about, I don't know, somebody keeps oddly colored spoons in the attic space, and you're just like, what? It would
true.
catch you up, and that would screw things up. So it's the change of something sensible to something that doesn't make sense, that changes the way something about your own psychology. I don't know.
That's true.
It's interesting.
I watch a lot of those quote unquote social experiments. It's been a while since I've seen that one, but I've seen other ones, and some of them I guess have some sort of legitimacy to why they're doing it, and then other ones I'm like, that's like kind of sexual assault. Some of them get really bad.
This whole sandpaper incident and whatever that was. I don't even remember what the hell he did. All I know is that he was some guy that was accused of some kind of sexual incident.
I've seen some, and I don't know if they're staged or whatever, but I have seen certain ones where they're walking and they'll, like, at that point it's not even a social experiment. The title of the video ends up being a social experiment, but socially, what do you think is going to happen when you're walking by a woman with a skirt and you try to pull up the skirt? That is A, very clearly wrong, and B, if she's with a guy, the guy's going to get mad. That's not an experiment.
No.
You kind of know what's going to happen. I like the ones where they'll try to talk to somebody and then person will crouch behind them and they push them over, like a little bit of slapstick, but then the guy gets mad. Mm-hmm. What did you think was going to happen?
It's true.
So
there's other things that have been studied in actual scientific way, stuff like the bystander effect and all these different psychological phenomena that we otherwise wouldn't know about.
Like the gold digger videos.
Yeah.
Where
those are kind of funny too, I suppose.
But the bystander, there have been some bullying ones where they'll do like a role play of somebody getting bullied and they'll watch the bystanders, and very few people ever jump in.
I feel like there's a lot of potential for people to do just actually invent social experiments to see what kind of things happen. Like those are just interesting ones. I mean, the bystander effect also applies to, I think the classic one is if there's a room where 3 people are taking a test, but only one of them is actually a subject, the other 2 people are, just part of the experiment, and then they start to fill this room with smoke. If the 2 people that are not being studied don't react, the person who is being studied also chooses not to react, just to not seem out of the ordinary. They don't make a big fuss out of things necessarily just because they go along with what other people are doing. It's difficult to summarize very quickly, I suppose.
Well, that makes sense. I was thinking...
Are you familiar with the Milgram experiment? The one where they were told to shock a certain person if they got the answers to questions wrong? No?
No.
God. Okay, I'm going to botch this really quickly. So,
okay.
There is a person that's being the subject of this experiment. This person is brought into like a lab type setting where they're told that they're going to work with a partner, and the partner, their job is to basically administer punishments for wrong answers if on these list of questions. The other person is in a different room and they're hooked with a machine, and the person's being experimented on is told this other person that's not being experimented on is going to receive an electric shock, increasing in power as they get things wrong for everything that they get wrong. So then they go through, they ask questions, and eventually you get to like down the list if they've got so many wrong, where it's getting to like there's a big danger sign on the board or whatever, and the person will start acting like screaming out in pain or like this hurts or stop or whatever, and then there's a person beside them saying no, continue the experiment. We have to carry on, you know. And then the subject of the experiment, most of the time, just continues and there's like a big lethal button at the end or whatever. And like by the time they reach the end, the patient on the other side is no longer responding. You don't hear anything. They just ask a question, no answer is given, and the person running the test says, "No answer is given. Give a shock." The person's like, presses the shock. It's crazy, and the look on your face, it sounds like something out of like Nazi Germany or something. But these are average North American people that were studied in this way, and this would never pass like ethics guidelines by today's standards. But anybody who thinks, like, everybody's like, okay, I would never do that. I wouldn't. There's no chance that I would follow through. But you know what? On average, people are quite average. So I feel like there's a dark side of human psychology that was brought out in that one social experiment. There's a lot more of that could be done too, but not by ethics guidelines today.
Would you continue to push?
I don't know, and I think it's the fair answer. I can't just
answer. I don't know.
I can't take the moral high ground and say I'm better than the people that were in these experiments that were just told what to do and they kept doing it. But it is compared to sort of a Nazi-esque thing, because then you look at these officers in you know the World War II era that were just exterminating people and they were following orders. How accountable are those people? Lots of people would say they're entirely accountable and they should be, you know, thrown in jail or suffer a death sentence or something. But at the end of the day, how different are those people from me and you? They're just normal people.
That's true.
They did atrocious things, but to think that you are somehow immensely better than them, I think is maybe getting the wrong idea.
If you're going it based on the murderous level, using the Nazi officers,
It's a good example, I think.
the only time that I will be better than a Nazi officer is right after I die, right? Because right now, I haven't killed anybody yet,
I guess.
right? So it's thus far, the way I see it is only when I die and I've lived my life without murdering massive amounts of people, only then am I finally considered better.
Sure. And then you want to take it a step further. Is there an objective good? Is it objectively good not to kill people? Which morally, from humans, we have to accept that it is bad to do that. Otherwise, our society doesn't really function. But I don't know. Who's keeping score is the question. If you're religious-
Objectively, is it bad to take a human life?
Yeah.
I think there are certain situations, like
is relative to the human experience. And if you're religious, you would say God, and that's where the inquiry stops. But if you're not religious, yeah, religious people are kind of right. Atheistic people don't have this absolute guiding compass. But I would argue neither do they. We don't hit on religion very often on this podcast.
Only because that is a bit everywhere. That is a hard thing for me to talk about.
Is it?
Only because born and raised Catholic.
I went to Catholic school all the time growing up. My
Okay.
dad's side is like actually Catholic. and
Perfect.
Mom's side is pretty devoted Christian.
I think there's some beautiful moments that are personally centered around religion. Like my father was a born and raised Catholic. My mother was not. Without being pressed, without being anything, when my dad proposed to my mom, she allegedly, I'd never asked her about it, I've only heard stories, wrote a letter to my dad's mom, my grandmother, saying about how much she loved my father and so forth, and how, because of how important it is for, you know, she wasn't Catholic, she wasn't super religious, but she switched, she made the change to Catholicism before the wedding and whatnot, and she seemed to do it on her own merit, and I think that there's something nice there. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, there's a lot of bad. I'm a born and raised Catholic. I can't say I'm a hard atheist, but I just don't know. Like I don't go around saying, "Oh, I'm an atheist." I make jokes. I mean, I'm in churches more often in a year than most people. Most of the time, it's with
True.
weddings.
We're in a lot of churches.
But there have been some I haven't done a lot of Catholic mass or Catholic weddings, but Catholic weddings sometimes will even break to do communion. Not all, some do. Mm-hmm. And then, this is what bothers me. I'm there working. I'm being paid. But the Catholic guilt in me, when there's communion, I think I should go. I'm like, I can't do that. And not even thinking, when they say the Hail Mary or the Our Father, I word it. It is subconscious. It is ingrained in me. I am operating a camera going, Our Father.
Yeah, no, that's true. I pretty much know every single word.
Yeah, but I don't even think about it. It's just one of those hypnosis.
Yeah. Religion, a hypnosis check. No, I don't know. It's something that I thought about a lot more as like a 17, 18, 19-year-old.
See, I think about it more now.
You do?
When I was younger, I was a hard no.
Okay.
Well, not younger. Basically after my mom died, I was thinking, yeah, that's a hard no. I don't think that it's possible. And now, even after going through what went on with Dylan, I still can't be a hard no anymore. And it's jarring because I used to be, and I'm like, I don't know.
No, and that's fair not to know. And I mean, most people would say, well, that position is atheist agnostic, so just saying that you don't know. But, I suppose I ascribe a certain amount of confidence that I know what isn't true. I can't tell you what is true necessarily.
So what isn't true?
I just don't really subscribe to any of the major religions that humans have invented. But I think that lots of them have plenty of merit. There's lots of good stories and things you can take away from them. So,
of course.
I mean, our society's built on these merits. Of course. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. The general premise that there's, a God is the part that I disagree with more than anything. Not that there's necessarily some kind of distinction we can make between good and evil or perhaps best life practices or best laws, even though most of the laws, if not like 99% of them, are antiquated. Some of them are still okay, at least in this time and age. It's a good mix of everything, not just the Christian upbringing that I remember, but also stuff from Asian, religions from Asia or elsewhere in the world. Things I've heard about, basically, popular religions.
I think, I mean, one of the main things with most of them is, you kind of have to do good. I'm more of just a karma type person. I think that if you try your best, and you honestly try your best, and you really, really try hard to not, wrong people in ways that are controllable.
Sure.
And you don't kill anybody, right? Like George Carlin used to say, you don't need 10 commandments. At best, thou shalt not kill anyone unless thou gets really pissed off or something like that. So you shouldn't kill anybody because objectively my life is no more valuable than yours, so I have no reason to take yours.
Yeah.
And you have no reason to take mine. And if you do a few bad things along the way, that doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. If you have a pattern of bad things, then that still doesn't technically make you a bad person. You made bad decisions. And I've always liked the idea that after, I'll be optimistic after 80 years of my life that I'm not just gone when I die.
Yeah, unfortunately, optimism can't bring truth to.
I know that, but I can see why there's comfort in it. I can see why when people get older, there's comfort in it because they want to know that it's not the end. And even now, I'm thinking I don't want it to all. Not that it would all be for nothing, but I just don't want it to be like.
I think that makes sense. All for nothing kind of idea. I've accepted it. Do you know who preys on the need to fill this thing of loss that humans have the most? Like which
Funeral homes?
No.
Oh.
Which sect of Christianity? Which one do you think is like swooping in to fill the void of loss in people's lives? So I didn't know until like a couple weeks ago.
Filling the loss in people's lives?
Yeah, like their literal tactic for indoctrination is like, people in your life will die. How will you fill this void? Turn to God.
See, you're going to tell me something wrong, or something, not wrong, something different, but like to me, that's also the Catholic Church. They try not to look at death as a negative
does
thing.
the Catholic Church walk around giving out pamphlets about it?
I haven't taken too many Catholic pamphlets, but I'm assuming no.
No. Jehovah's Witness.
We gotta get one on here.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll see if I can invite one. They come to my door every once in a while, but
We gotta find
I'll do
somebody.
every Jehovah's Witness I find from here out. I'm inviting to this podcast, so one of them's gonna bite. Maybe some are watching the podcast.
I saw a
Anyways.
Jehovah's Witness comment on a Niagara board, on a Niagara best kept secret board. I'm like, huh. He was giving away a book.
Yeah.
And when you
Was it
looked at
the
the book,
Bible?
it was one of
All right.
So I'm like, well, I'm gonna contact him because at least he's thinking differently.
That's funny.
It was fake. It wasn't necessarily fake, but he wasn't from Niagara. So I'm not even gonna message him. But we gotta find somebody. I think there's a way to talk. There obviously is a way to talk objectively without pissing anybody off.
No, I don't. I think that shouldn't be the precept of the argument. It shouldn't be we need to not piss a person off, because I don't care if I do necessarily.
True.
Or not. I mean, they're a guest on the podcast, but if they can't handle a disagreement with ideas, then maybe they're not the right person. But I'm sure we can find the right person. But
I'm not saying about that. Disagreements happen all the time. I'm saying, piss them off in the sense that we can have arguments. We can talk about the arguments. But
for a lot of religious people, that's end of discussion. You tell them that what they believe in probably isn't true.
It's true.
And that's it. End of discussion. How dare you challenge my faith?
I'd be really intrigued. Cameo, kind of.
And for everybody else that isn't religious in that same sense, it does look really fragile. It looks really defensive from the outside to just close up as soon as somebody challenges an idea. So you definitely need somebody within the group that's a little bit more open-minded and a little bit more.
I want to talk to an
discuss.
old priest too.
Old priest would be great. Pretty much any elder in any religion would be pretty ideal.
An elder and a young, it would also be kind of neat to interview a young, fresh out of the
Clerical studies, I don't know.
whatever studies school, like a young priest.
Pretty much that should be the division of passion and wisdom at that point. If you're dividing between the young and the old. I imagine the young people might feel like they have more answers than they actually do, and the older people probably have more answers than they actually are giving out.
Do you think that by the time a priest, because I just get told to stop mentioning it because I'm never going to get an interview with them, but Melissa's priest house, the old priests, they have no interest in being on camera. I've asked, but they're so...
You've asked them directly?
No, I don't go in there. I'm not allowed. It's a private residence.
Perfect.
It sounds stupid to say, but they sound so much like regular people, which obviously they are, and a retired priest. So they really sound like regular people. Like the one priest has an impressive movie collection, and a lot of it is very violent films. And I'd love to talk to him. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. But do you think that when priests reach a certain age, like you said, their wisdom, or the fact that they've lived this long, takes over, and they're less preachy and more just conversational in the wisdom and the lessons that they've learned and taught over the years?
I don't know. Preachiness has its motives. So if you are currently
Exactly.
a
You want
priest,
people to join your church? And...
yeah, And
give a
then
weekly.
there's something to be gained from people being preachy. Even if you're talking about like the nut on the side of the street that's just yelling out something about God,
The end is nigh. Repent.
there's a certain attention and a certain something to be gained to that person, I would argue. Whereas person who's not, they're just looking to hang out with friends and family for the rest of their lives or retired, they'd be a little bit more candid, a little bit more genuine, I'd think.
I'm hoping he comes back in. But with 6 shifts left, it's very unlikely. So I should have talked to him, or should have asked him right away. He was a priest. I can't remember who even mentioned it on here. He was telling me, maybe he's a pastor, because he has a family. He's not a Catholic priest. He had a wife, he had kids, he had grandkids. Religious guy, though. And he was telling me about he was so impressed at how quickly we were able to print stuff off, and at what degree, because the photocopier can actually staple and make booklets and whatnot, so quite complex things. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but it can do a lot. He's like, technology has come so far, and it ends up circling back to how addicted to phones technology his granddaughter is. And he had said that at one point when she was coming over, he's like, I need to find a way to organically make a conversation without just trying to get her to force her to talk. So he took every photo in his house and turned it upside down.
We might have talked about this in the podcast.
I feel like we did, now that I'm mentioning
Out on
this.
your balcony.
I think so,
Yeah.
Every picture in the house I turned upside down. Like I took the picture and flipped it upside down. So it still looked normal, but it didn't necessarily look normal. Sorry. As soon as I said, but yeah, that's an interesting person. It's not a religious lesson.
No.
But he thought outside the box. He used psychology a little bit.
Clever guy.
And he said she was noticeably kind of not weirded out, but she wasn't.
We are in for more trouble by the time we're grandparents. What are the kids going to be doing? I don't know. Technology is still going to have a foothold. Technology is an umbrella term. I mean, I'm sure back, you could argue certain toys or certain reading material distracted the kids from interacting with their grandparents at one point. In the 1920s, some granddaughter who
Stop
was more
reading
interested
that
in
book and come talk to me.
Yeah. So what? I'm curious. What could possibly distract the youth of tomorrow in a way that they make
Virtual
them
reality.
unreachable? Maybe, but that's a lot closer. We can conceptualize virtual reality. That old guy probably couldn't conceptualize what a phone would be back when he was 25.
That's true. So if you're going beyond virtual reality, see, that's why we need to go to the virtual reality place, because I've never been in a situation where it's been so immersive I can turn off this and just experience. So I would still say for me right now, virtual reality would be it, because I've never been so immersed that I forgot about the outside world. Outside of virtual reality, what other technology is there? Teleportation? Is your granddaughter spending too much time with her time machine? She's spending too much time in the past. You can't talk to her.
Checking out other times.
But then you can't get mad, because that's amazing education.
Pretty amazing. I mean, really, if you can accept it, kids staring at their phones all day has some benefits. They're probably going to be more proficient with these technologies than we are. So at least that's working out for them. Unless you say idiocracy is upon us and they're not going to know how to code things and develop their own things from this, and they're all just dependent.
I feel like schools help with that, though. There's a lot more.
Schools are always way behind the curve.
Yes, but there is a lot more of a desire to show people how to code. There's even toys that Mason, my nephew, had built a computer, a very rudimentary computer, and was able to learn how a computer worked and was able to play a educational version of Minecraft on the computer to do more stuff. So it was very neat. And there's, I saw that there's a Harry Potter endorsed wand that teaches you how to code the wand to do things. So I realize you're kind of coding magic, but learning the proper sequences of code to code the wand to do things. So kind of neat. So I feel like that stuff is a very smart thing to do.
They're
children.
making learning coding more friendly,
Which
I
is
would say. Because in university, they try to make us use Python, which was a pretty friendly, user-friendly coding language. Quite easy to comprehend.
But that's kind of the way that things have went, right? When computers first came out, they weren't consumer friendly, right? You had to kind of be but then when, you argue Microsoft Windows or the Macintosh and whatnot with the graphical user interface, it made it friendly. It made it accessible to the common person.
Original GUIs were great.
Yep. And then as that developed, people became more powerful, or people became kind of more enchanted and enfranchised with the computers, and now we're at coding, which is an important thing in our future, kind of like computers were. At one point, coding might not have been realized as a major future, and then the App Store came out, and you realize you can make a lot of money with even a reasonably poorly coded app. Mm-hmm. So now they're trying to find a way to make it accessible for people to learn, and it's good.
Makes sense. You get more ideas out there.
And I mean, schools being behind the curve, that's true, but they also are kind of forcing students to be at least in the curve, because Mason's, a lot of his courses is computer work. Like they're from what I understand, a lot of the courses are spent in like a computer lab classroom.
It's neat. I love how I don't hear people complaining anymore that they made their kids stop learning cursive writing. That seems to have gone away. I don't know. Nobody talks about that.
You learned it, right?
Yeah.
And so did I. And I forget what age I was when I started to learn how to.
Grade 3 was
grade 3
cursive for me.
So grade 3, that'd be what? How old's grade 3? Grade 3
would be probably
8
years oldish.
So I wonder, I could always ask, see if Mason's being taught cursive.
No, it definitely
isn't.
isn't.
They're not at all teaching?
No. But apparently, at first, that was just filled with computer time where you learned to type, which I did both. I think the typing
all the
came
right
later.
type.
Yeah,
it was a program I used way back when.
I don't remember what that guy
That was.
using.
It was called all the right type.
I had the wrong mindset.
And Math Circus.
I definitely had the wrong mindset at the time because I was familiar with computers. It was by the time I was in the 5th grade, they were trying to teach us to type, which I think is a bit late in the game. But
5th grade.
Yeah, that was because we learned cursive in grade 3, and it wasn't until grade 4 or 5 that we really got on computers. At least in my school, I was in a Catholic school that was probably very underfunded and outdated, but it was. I didn't care for it at the time. I didn't want to learn the proper, hand configuration or anything. And even as an adult, I think back and I'm like, kind of good thing I didn't learn that, because I'd probably want to learn something more efficient, like Dvorak or something, strange keyboard layout like that, or type on something that's like an ergonomic keyboard, because I know that there's more efficient ways to do it.
I learned cursive. I learned typing. I remember my dad had like a window, I think it was Windows 98. That was my first operating system that I really used. And mornings before school, way back when you would wake up hours before you had to do anything as a kid, right? School, the bus comes at 8, school starts at 9 or 8:30. I was up at like 5:30, 6. Dad would be up in the shower. I get to go on the computer. And I remember going to, there was a TVO Kids website.
Oh, you had the internet when you got a computer. See, I started with Windows 95, but I didn't have the internet until like years later.
All right, we had the internet. I don't think I started with the internet. I started with Magic School Bus games.
I played some of those as a kid.
See, I've asked this question before, and now just thinking about it, the thoughts are coming back about like feeling. It's not guilty. It's a feeling of warmth. It's a weird thing. Like thinking back to that Magic School Bus games. There was a Willy Wonka, like a Wonka factory website that I would visit. Very neat to think that kind of started it all. I mean, most people, I would argue that the average person probably doesn't spend as much time in front of a computer as we do for creative tasks.
Yeah.
Right? And I wonder if even the simple thing of being introduced so young kind of, I don't know if anything like that sparks it. I know that nothing on TVO Kids made me want to be a photographer necessarily, but
no,
it's kind of neat.
Pretty much all of the time that I spent on a computer for a very long time was just playing games. And I remember the one that I first played was like a capture the flag kind of game that came with Windows 95, as far as I remember. And then it wasn't long until I was on Windows 98, which had a couple more. There was card games, and there was, I think Minesweeper was on 95 too. But anyways, I played a little bit of that. And then there was like racing games. Like there was just a couple of them that I played, which I thought were the Need for Speed games were pretty good at the time, stuff like that. But I don't know. None of that really, and my parents probably thought that at the time too. Were like, this is a waste of time. This doesn't lead to anything. And arguably it doesn't, but got me on a computer for a long time.
My aunts always hated the game realm, but especially on the PlayStation, it's like Crash Bandicoot. Nah, it's a waste of time.
It's stimulation.
It is stimulation.
All that led to maybe some of the first games where I actually would read and follow a story. I think Ocarina of Time, Zelda, like the Legend of Zelda.
There's a creative side to things. You follow a story.
That is iconic in my brain. Like that sparked probably a lot of creativity, like realizing how complex these things could really be. That was on the N64 back then, but
I cheated my way to getting my aunts to accept that games could be educational, because I remember getting the first edition of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on PlayStation. I'm learning, and I wasn't wrong. I loved Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I had a handheld Tiger Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, so that was my educational thing. The Tiger one sucked because the questions repeated themselves after a while, so you could actually memorize them. But I don't know. I think getting kids to start with computers so early, like as we've said countless times before, just giving your toddler a cell phone as a distraction, they're not necessarily getting anything but stimulation, not even educational stimulation. For the most part, it's just watching a video. They might not even be able to comprehend it. They might be listening to music. I feel like the best time to probably start, honestly, is 7, 8, when they can comprehend something. Maybe a little bit younger. But it's going to be interesting being parents, because you can't let your kid go behind. You can't let them not know technology. And there's no way in shit I'm going to be raising a kid that doesn't know something.
Yeah.
That's gonna be hard too, because I don't want my kid growing up like I did. I don't want him to be a rock in a chair in front of a computer playing The Sims. Because as fun as it was, and I still enjoy it, I feel guilty. I wasted so much goddamn time.
I'm curious as to if my kids would take advantage of it or not, but I feel like we live in a time of materialistic wealth. And what I mean, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, I'm sure, is that when I was a kid, like I'm making big into photography now. That's a job for me. But my dad would never really hand me a camera so much, like especially back when he had film cameras and stuff, just because it was this expensive thing, and he wanted to protect it, and that's fine. And it wasn't really a thing that was for a kid to use anyway, so that's fine. But I feel like maybe I could have benefited from that early on. And as far as things go, I have no gripe against handing my kid $2,000 worth of camera equipment. I don't.
But you don't even
care.
need to.
No, not necessarily.
Like if
you get DSLR for cheap. For
well,
sure.
And Kelton has taken it before too. My other nephew, if I'm going to do something and I have a camera, and I know that they're going to be here, sometimes I bring the T3, which I don't need anymore. And there's nothing as we reviewed with the wedding photos, if the settings are right, there's nothing wrong with using that as a camera for fun. Yeah. And if he dropped it and it broke, that sucks. Hopefully the lens is okay. But yeah, I hope that my kids are creative enough, because you put up a green screen and the sky is the limit. We're only limited by their creativity and what dad can do in After Effects.
And think of it too. What if you just set your kid down like, here's After Effects and here's Adobe Premiere. Have fun. As a kid, I would have delved into settings and things like that. I'm sure just to mess around with it.
But when in that theoretical situation, are you giving them After Effects and video footage, or you're just giving them a camera, After Effects, and Premiere?
You give them a loose idea of how it goes together. I mean, when I was a kid, the equivalent I had a
Movie
stereo, and I had a cassette tapes, and my brothers and I would do silly things with the cassette
I did that
tapes.
too.
Yeah.
Okay,
but that's what I had. There was no computer involved in the process. Heck no. I didn't have anything.
I would tell stories on my Talk Boy, my Tiger Talk Boy,
but it's
Walkman. No, Talk Boy.
Through trial and error, you figure a lot of things out. I don't know. I feel like kids of the future have a lot more of an opportunity to just soak up everything. Which, I mean, you can't force somebody to want to do that, but I would want to do that if I could, be a kid with these kind of motives.
Oh, I know. Although, I might take it differently. I might say to Jesse Jr., it's not the actual name, here we have a camera, we have Premiere, and we have After Effects. And say that the camera, and explain it to them and be like, you're in charge. I want to help because that sounds like so much fun. If I go to Mason, I'm like, Mason, let's make a movie. Maybe I should.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
that'd be interesting.
It makes sense that you would make him the creative drive, whereas like
I'll be the workhorse.
Technical stuff about lighting and sound and all that, whatever. Just let him be the creative side of it.
That'd be interesting.
Be curious. And you got to be creative. Like, if he wants a certain thing in a shot, you can think, how can I do that? And then if you can't think of the answer, ask him. How do you think we would get a camera to have that in front of it?
I can do that. I'm gonna do like a 48-hour film challenge
project?
with him.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It's an interesting idea.
Could have like I feel like this is like a future thing where there's like a film festival of like young creative minds, and you gotta be like
there has to be
8 years old.
There has to be one already.
Like what can kids dream up?
If a 4-year-old can access an iPhone's camera and take photos and videos, there has to be a film festival for 8-year-olds. 8-year-olds already.
This is uninhibited creativity.
That's where it's the best. Fuck, like the first week of January, that's what I'm going to be doing.
Do you remember having a functional imagination as a child? Because I feel like it was so much better back then. I don't know when
functional imagination in what sense? Because I still have a pretty big imagination.
Sure, but I don't know. There's some kind of untetheredness of being a kid when like you can just creatively think of these concepts and worlds foreign to this one that are genuinely of your own creation. You aren't sure, you probably have influences here or there, but they don't seem like they're derived from anything in the material world. Whereas I don't feel like I do that as much anymore. I guess a lot of adults just take drugs to have that kind of imagination, but since I don't do that, I feel like I've lost it.
Except for your massively high in THC dose chocolate.
Yeah. We should probably try to get people who distribute marijuana goods on
He didn't reply.
Podcast. That's okay. We'll find somebody. If you have a business that distributes edible cannabis, but I guess with other drugs, I don't know what there is out there that you could eat or or distribute, and you would want your face to be shown on a podcast still.
But if you are doing something illegal, as we said countless times before, I would love to do an interview where we
Interview a shadow person.
interview you in the shadow. We change your voice, do it right.
Anyways, we know of somebody that has really well packaged and designed
I was
marijuana
impressed.
edibles.
And you say that it was strong and a good product.
I didn't take a bunch of it, so I didn't really get destroyed, but I guess we could talk about that for a bit.
Melissa, I think that will be one of her favorite memories of you. It was funny to watch.
So-
it hit you.
Yes, but that's the interesting thing about it. So a lot of people take edibles, and if it's their first time doing stuff like that, a lot of times they regret it and they say they'd never do it again because they take too much. It's very easy to do because it takes a long time to kick in. I've never had that problem. I haven't done it that often. Someone's like, oh, I made these Nanaimo bars or whatever that have weed in them. I'm like, okay. This was a chocolate bar, and she said to me that the person who made them smokes weed daily and is just a full-time stoner, and one of them gets him where he wants to be. So I figured an eighth of that is probably a suitable dose for me. So I ate it, and it's interesting because just kind of like smoking it, but more so, the effects kick in instantaneously. It was 35 minutes in because I timed it.
That's when you say instantaneously, there is that delay, but when it hit you, you could tell.
Yes, it was immediate. And the interesting thing with that too is if you smoke it, the effects they come on and they build up and up and up, and then they start coming down, I don't know, an hour in or however much for each individual person. With eating it, I find it is instantaneously at the peak, and it'll sustain there for a while, and then it'll go down. But you don't have any buildup. It's just all at once kind of thing. It was interesting too. It wasn't... you don't lose any mental clarity, at least with the product that I ate. It just, you feel different. It's
You couldn't
hard to
measure things?
quantify. Oh, I could measure things just fine. I had to do some renovations in the kitchen after that, so I was measuring the size of MDF panels that I'll be installing to paint out. Like, they're furring out cabinets, so they're flush with the wall. I gotta add some trim to it, but basically picking MDF because we can paint over it. Cool. Easy enough to do. Wasn't that much work, really. Spent most of the time, actually, after that, looking up videos on how people create islands in their kitchen with the use of old
Lots of
cabinets
sand.
and stuff. Sand, yes.
Water.
Important on an island. That'd be. There's so many creative ideas for rooms. Have you seen? What the heck is it? It's a remake of something. Oh, I watched it with my roommate the other day, but I haven't seen the original, so it's really hard to figure out what the heck it was. It's about these people that are. Is it cloned or are they robots? Oh my god.
What?
I don't know. I wish I knew the name of the movie because I'm blanking on now, and I feel like you would know. It's like a 1980s movie, Blade Runner. Wait,
did you just ask me if I've seen Blade Runner?
No, I know that you probably
Okay.
seen Blade Runner.
Yes.
Anyways, the remake. Have you seen the remake?
Yeah.
Okay. In that movie, there's a bunch of scenes in this one room where there's like a seating area, and around it's like a pool of water, and there's like a reflective walls. It just looks like a big cube. Fairly functionless. You just sort of sit in the middle. I feel like that's going to be the future for like... You could do it with virtuality very, very cost effectively, where you have these weird room designs. This all trailed off because you made me think of an island. But then I thought of a literal... You could have a literal island in your house surrounded by water if you had virtual reality, and you could go there to read a book
That's true.
if you wanted to.
Speaking of virtual reality, even though we talked about it a few times today even, I can't remember if it was Microsoft or Sony, but they put out a patent on a new product for their next gen of consoles. And when I was younger, I always said that this was the cure to obesity. And I think they're finally going to do it, and I'm intrigued. Virtual reality is wonderful, except for the most part, you're stuck on the actual ground. And because you're stuck on the ground, you can only move maybe 20 feet if you have a big enough room. But if you were on like a treadmill that you walk left, right, and it would move, so you're actually in one spot.
Many people have implemented ways of using in virtual reality.
Yeah, and I've seen it, but it's nice to see that the console people are at least trying to come up.
Somebody patented that. You can't patent that. It's been done by so many other manufacturers.
Something about it makes it their own.
Okay, well,
like
I'll have to look into it, but I don't know if it's like an omnidirectional something. I can't remember what they call it, but
There's something, because with patents, it's always, it's,
most of them consist of a surface that you slip on,
yeah.
and there's like a waistband thing that goes around that sort of stops. It butts into you and you just slip. But, yeah, what about that can be patented? That's what I want to know.
If they,
And if it is patented, whoever the heck has been doing it before should sue the hell out of Microsoft or Sony, because other people have done it well, made it work as a product that you could buy.
see, the problem with stuff like that is they can come up with a design that is, for the most part, similar. But if they change enough, then that's the argument. That's fine. And with consoles, what Sony sells or what Microsoft sells, that becomes I forget what the friggin' point I was trying to make. They can change it enough that it's a I don't know what the fucking point I was gonna make.
That's okay. I think we're both probably pretty tired at
I'm-
this point.
Yeah, I as you were talking, I was thinking, because this is one of the first times where I've been sitting talking to you, and we don't talk like this when we're not on camera. We're normally quieter, and we don't have long form discussions like this.
There's less to talk about, and more of it is social. 'Cause
Yes.
it's just circumstantial. Who's doing what today, and whatever stuff that's relevant to the now.
But today was one of the first times where I was talking to you, and if it wasn't for the camera right there, I'm like, shit, this is this is not a podcast. This is two people conversing about different ideas. That's actually wonderful. And I have thought about this before. I like you. I have enjoyed the past 40 episodes of this, and it is riveting. I've got to know so many things about you.
This is also spawned an idea where somebody was telling people to do podcasts for this very reason, where they say you could pick somebody you don't even know that well, and if you just do a show with them, you can discover so much about that person, and it's like a fast track for like becoming friends with somebody.
I do feel like we've only known each other for like 2.5 years, and in those 2.5 years, it's ramped up. But this past year has been insane. You're an incredibly close friend now. I trust you with a lot of things.
It's very much because of the podcast, for sure. Why did we have this idea in the first place?
Why?
Yeah. Because I think the only thing that I can remember about it is specifically I wanted to have some kind of recurring content.
Yes.
And a podcast seemed like a good thing to do. It for us, as far as our technical skills go, it was very easy.
It's not. We have everything.
So the hard part was fostering a comfort level on camera, at least for me, because I wasn't used to that.
I went back and I go back and look a little bit, snippets and whatnot. And to listen to you at the beginning, now you're very conversational, but the first episode, maybe even the second and third, you were trying.
I want to because I mentioned it several times probably within the first couple podcasts that it was something hard for me to get used to, and one day I'll be good at it. I don't know if I'm good at it now, but I feel like I'm a lot better at it.
And
it's like a retrospective of something that I probably should have noticed like 20 episodes ago, but I get it now.
Yeah, and it's something that takes a little bit of time. Mine, now I just talk. When I used to do the radio show, I'd have to act bored because that was part of the shtick, and then I would always try to just make sure that my voice would sound like exactly like it should on a radio show, like a nice little deep, so it sounded good on the radio. Kevin, I hate that movie. I don't do that here, and it's interesting because now it's just purely me and whatnot. I laugh, and sometimes I friggin' hate my laugh, and sometimes I say stupid shit, and it's okay. Why do we do it? Reoccurring content. It's nice. People argue that it takes too much time, and that's possibly true. Some people have come to me and they're like, I listen. I don't know how the fuck you do it. Like, that's true. Even doing one a week, that's crazy. This thing, we started recording, what? It's been an hour and a half?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a long time. And it's awesome, but it's nice to have that schedule. I find it nice to know I need to get this done, and then it's weird having a reoccurring project makes me more productive in general.
The interesting thing about it, as far as the time-taking aspect, one, okay, the audio is easy. I mean, that's been my job. And honestly, at this point, we've streamlined it with hardware that's the software.
If you ever want to edit the video,
which is fair,
would you?
Maybe I will. But the video side of it is interesting because the editing, sure, it takes basically probably the length of at least the podcast, plus
probably about 1.5.
Yeah, but because anything that you add, anything you do in editing is additive in the sense that you're putting things in that weren't really there to begin with. You're not cutting to some kind of camera angle with B-roll or whatever necessarily, but you can throw stuff in.
And I do.
We didn't originally intend. We're just sitting here having a conversation.
Yeah.
But maybe there's B-roll happening right now. Cuts of random shot of some kind, if you remember. And I don't actually care if you do, but I hope it's of something really strange.
Okay.
They vary so much in size. Like,
So penises.
you could get but like,
Yes.
you could have some that fit the dick perfectly.
Hey, we talk about you a lot.
So we're playing a game, and Jesse, you lost. Here's the reasons why.
I am most likely to be included in every conversation. Well, they're rude. Pours cheap vodka into Grey Goose to impress people.
I could see that one.
Knows how to use a fax machine. Fuck you!
We're old.
You do know how to use a fax
That
machine.
one's rude. Loses pants. That one's fair.
That's
that one's
fair.
very fair.
That's fair.
Leaves drunk friend on the street. That's personal. That's between you and me.
Did I-
This one sits at a stop sign waiting for it turn to green. Well, that's just the law. And finally, that's rude.
I don't know what that one is.
Is a fucking pushover.
Melissa gave you that one.
I'll be back.
Oh no.
There you go.
I find, as with everything, a lot of people say that when you're making a movie, the editing is the last chance to get the direction right, and it's true here. When I have a lot of
Does
time,
this? You really feel like you can change the direction of the podcast?
no, I feel like I can change the mood. I feel like I can actually get a laugh if people are watching it. Like if it's audio, no, I have no control over that.
No.
Right?
Which some people might listen that way.
But if they're actually watching the podcast, or if they hear something and they look, if there's an awkward moment, like there was a few last week with Kevin, there's that awkward moment where he's talking and it just cuts back to us and we're just staring. That's funny. But if it stayed on Kevin, you lose that moment of
It's
humor.
the punctuation, basically. The cuts are the punctuation of
And
any
that's-
joke or comment, really.
And that's basically the extent of it. And you say streamlined, I changed, I don't know if you've noticed at all, but over the past probably 7 weeks, the color scheme on the podcast has changed a lot. I've done a lot of different color correcting
Should
jobs.
watch the podcast.
You should at least watch the first few minutes of each one, because I changed sometimes we're a little bit more blue.
I tend to look at the thumbnail.
Sometimes we're a little bit more white or yellow. Like I changed the look, just having fun. But I always have a base, so I know because our cameras are set up right and we're using these lights that this is my base. So I just lay it and it's all perfect, and then I go from
Very
there.
consistent.
Yeah. So it's fun. Why did we start? We wanted something consistent, and we wanted to interview people, most of which, aside from Antea, we haven't actually interviewed. That's actually not true. I wanted to interview Antea, Kevin, and Alex Kazan. Those are 3 people that I wanted to interview. There's still a few people missing.
I think we will at least get one person next week. This is a for sure thing.
He, as long as wife number 1 lets him on, Andrew Dixon, my longtime baby photography colleague and TH Media coworker, is going to come on, and he, from what he has told me, has some riveting stuff. So we have to be on our game because we only really have about an hour next week with him before we go out for dinner. So
stay tuned for an awesome accent.
it will be. It's going to be great. It's going to be our not quite Christmas special, and well, we'll talk about it after. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.